We live in this culture that is just completely obsessed with finding the perfect balance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like we're constantly told we need to master the ultimate hustle, right?
Right.
Climbing the ladder, engaging with the community, making an impact.
Right, but then simultaneously, you're supposed to maintain this pristine, unplugged mindfulness retreat in your personal life.
Exactly. It's like we want the loud impact of total engagement, but also the quiet peace of total isolation.
And usually trying to achieve both just leaves you feeling like you're, well, failing at both. I mean, it's pretty much the defining tension of modern life.
We treat this like it's some brand new problem caused by emails and smartphones. But what if I told you someone trying to engineer a permanent solution to this exact hustle versus retreat dilemma 900 years ago?
And not only did they try, but their experiment actually survived.
Right. I mean, it survived political assassinations, the French Revolution, literal Soviet minefields. Oh, and they also brew some of the world's most famous beers.
The historical trajectory of this whole thing is genuinely staggering.
It really is. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a massive stack of sources, historical encyclopedias, scholarly articles, modern Abbey newsletters, Wikipedia pages, just to explore the 900-year legacy of a man named Norbert of Xanten.
And the Premonstratensian Order, or I guess, as they're more commonly known, the Norbertines.
Yeah, the Norbertines. We are tracking a 12th century playboy courtier who gets struck by lightning, accidentally freezes his first followers to death, becomes a saint, and builds an institution that is, no joke, still running astronomical observatories today.
It's wild. And at the center of all that wild history is that exact tension you just mentioned. Like, how do you build a sustainable architecture for a life that requires both intense solitary contemplation and active, messy service to the public?
So let's start in the late 11th century in Xanten, which is in modern-day Germany. Norbert is born into nobility, and he's destined for an ecclesiastical career.
Right.
But, for a listener who's picturing a humble monk in a hair shirt, we probably need to clarify what a church career actually looked like for a rich kid in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it looked like a highly lucrative passive income stream.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Seriously, though, Norbert was made a secular canon at the Church of St. Victor in Xanten. And in this era, a secular canon basically received a benefice.
Which is what exactly?
It's essentially an endowment of land or income tied to a church office. So he collected the revenue, but he didn't necessarily have to be ordained as a priest. And he certainly didn't have to live a strict ascetic life.
Right. The historical records paint him as the ultimate worldly insider. I mean, he was an almoner for Archbishop Frederick of Cologne.
So he distributed charity.
Yeah, but he also served in the court of the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry V. He is at the absolute center of European power.
Wearing fine clothes, riding expensive horses.
Exactly. He's entirely embedded in the politics of the empire until the year 1115.
Right, 1115. That year is the psychological catalyst for everything that follows.
So Norbert is riding his horse near a village called Vreden. A sudden storm rolls in, and a thunderbolt strikes the ground right at his horse's feet.
Literally right at his feet.
Yeah, he is thrown from the saddle and just lies in the mud, completely unconscious and half dead for nearly an hour.
Wow.
And when he finally comes to, he claims he hears a voice calling him to repentance.
I mean, he is abruptly confronted with his own absolute mortality because the geopolitical power structures, the wealth, the favor of the emperor, none of that offers any protection when you're lying paralyzed in a ditch after a lightning strike.
It's the medieval equivalent of, like, a modern billionaire having a near-death experience and just immediately liquidating their fortune to go sleep on the streets.
That's a great way to put it. It is a radical overnight reversal.
Yeah. Norbert resigns his prestigious position, sells off his property, gives all the money away. He actually travels to Pope Gelasius II to get formal permission to become an itinerant wandering preacher.
And he gets that permission. But we really have to look closely at the mechanics of what happens next.
Why is that?
Because it serves as a massive cautionary tale. Pure, unadulterated zeal is incredibly dangerous if it isn't channeled into a workable structure.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Because it's so easy to romanticize this phase of his life, the rich man giving it all up for poverty.
Mm-hmm.
But the scholarly texts we reviewed detail a much darker reality.
Yeah, it gets pretty grim.
Norbert decides to become a barefoot street preacher in the snow, in the middle of the German winter.
Which is just brutal.
Right. His personal fervor was so intense that he seemed impervious to the elements. But the earliest companions who tried to follow him into this radical lifestyle, they couldn't handle it.
No, they actually got sick and died of the cold.
Yeah, they froze to death.
It is a devastating failure of leadership, and it highlights exactly why raw enthusiasm isn't enough to build something lasting.
He just had no framework.
Exactly. Norbert lacked any framework to protect his followers. He was even called out by his own peers at the Council of Fritzlar in 1118.
Right, where other canons officially denounced him as an innovator.
Which, by the way, in 12th century church politics is definitely not a compliment.
No, they're basically calling him a dangerous rogue.
Precisely. But this tragic failure in the snow is the crucial turning point. Norbert realizes that if he wants to genuinely reform the clergy and serve the poor without getting people killed, he needs a sustainable model.
Right, he needs rules.
Yeah. That realization pushes him to study existing successful structures. He looks at the Cistercians. He meets with St. Bernard of Clairvaux, who was this massive figure leading a huge network of disciplined monasteries.
And he realizes he needs a system of his own. Which brings us to the Council of Reims in 1119.
Okay.
Pope Calixtus II essentially tells Norbert, stop wandering around aimlessly, start a formal order.
Get organized.
Exactly. So by Christmas of 1120, or maybe 1121, Norbert and a new group of followers settle in this swampy, cross-shaped valley in France called Prémontré.
And this is the birthplace of the Canons Regular of Prémontré, the White Canons.
Wait, I'm a bit confused here. If his goal is to engage with the world and preach to the masses, why is he taking his followers out into an isolated, freezing swamp?
It seems contradictory, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hasn't he just become the exact thing he was trying to avoid? Isn't he just hiding from the world again?
It looks that way on the surface,
Yeah.
but the distinction really lies in the actual blueprint he used. Norbert didn't found an order of monks, he founded an order of canons regular.
Okay, what's the difference there?
It's fundamental. Traditionally, monks live by the rule of Saint Benedict. They withdraw from the world entirely, sealing themselves inside a cloister to seek God in isolation. Their whole goal is separation from society.
Right.
Canons, however, are ordained priests whose primary purpose is public ministry. They are supposed to be out in the towns.
So Norbert is trying to merge the two.
Exactly. He creates a hybrid. He adopts the rule of St. Augustine, which allows for public ministry and communal living. But then he injects it with the severe ascetic discipline of a cloistered monk.
Wow.
They wore white habits to denote angelic purity, setting them apart visually. Internally, though, their lives were grueling. They practiced severe fasting and chanted the divine office.
Let's actually break down the divine office for anyone who might be unfamiliar with monastic schedules. We aren't talking about, like, a quick morning prayer here.
No, not at all.
This is the liturgy of the hours, meaning they are stopping their work to gather in the church and sing psalms 7 times a day.
Including waking up in the pitch dark.
Yeah, at 3 a.m., to chant for an hour before going back to sleep.
It's intense.
Add in rigorous physical penances and these complex liturgies, like a unique, highly solemn Easter octave procession, and you just have an incredibly demanding internal life.
And yet, simultaneously, they are running local parishes, preaching in the public squares, and caring for weary pilgrims.
See, trying to maintain that level of intense internal discipline while dealing with the messy, exhausting realities of the general public, that sounds like a recipe for total burnout.
It really does.
That's like the analogy you used earlier with a hybrid work model. You know, you want the deep, uninterrupted focus of working from home. That's the cloister. But you also have the collaborative, outward-facing demands of being in the office and dealing with clients.
That analogy holds up perfectly. And Norbert's solution to that burnout was the abbey itself. The monastery wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a highly structured sanctuary.
To recharge.
Exactly. They retreated into the silence and the chanting to recharge their psychological and spiritual batteries before heading back out into the chaos of the medieval towns.
Because if you just minister to the world without the contemplative haven, you become depleted.
And if you just hide in the haven, you aren't serving your neighbor.
It's brilliant. He also recognized that this hybrid model shouldn't just be for a handful of elite men. He was surprisingly inclusive for the 1120s.
No, very much so.
Historical accounts mention a noble widow named Blessed Riquera, who became his first spiritual daughter.
Right. Norbert set up these double monasteries. Men and women lived in adjacent cloisters, sharing the same church building for liturgy, which was incredibly progressive for that era.
He even extended this architecture to everyday lay people. The chronicles describe Count Theobald of Champagne, who wanted to abandon his wealth and join the order, just like Norbert had done after the lightning strike.
But Norbert actually tells him no.
Yeah. He tells the Count to stay in the world, get married, and govern his territory justly. Instead of making him a canon, Norbert gives him a modified rule of lice and a white scapular.
And in 1122, this becomes the Third Order of St. Norbert.
It kind of makes me think of an open-source software community.
How so?
Well, you don't have to live at the tech headquarters to contribute to the mission, you know.
Yeah.
You can apply the philosophy from wherever you are.
That's a great comparison. And this profound adaptability caused the Premonstratensians to grow rapidly.
Which made Norbert a highly valuable asset to the broader church hierarchy.
Oh, definitely. He was no longer a rogue street preacher. He was a problem solver. The Pope realized he had the perfect weapon to deploy against a growing crisis in Antwerp.
The crisis being a man named Tanchelm.
Yes.
So Tanchelm was a heretic, causing massive social disruptions in Antwerp. He denied the validity of the priesthood, but more alarmingly for the Catholic Church, he blasphemed the Eucharist, the communion host.
Right.
The text we reviewed mentioned that his followers were actually stealing consecrated hosts and hiding them in filthy places to profane them.
And to understand why this required Norbert's intervention, you really have to understand the medieval mindset.
Which was?
Well, the Eucharist is the literal body of Christ to a 12th century Catholic. But beyond the theological desecration, denying the priesthood was a threat to the entire social fabric.
Because the church was the administrative backbone of society.
Exactly. Tanchelm wasn't just preaching bad theology, he was inciting an anti-clerical rebellion.
So Norbert goes in with his deeply disciplined canons, uses his immense skill as an orator, and systematically dismantles Tanchelm's movement.
He really shuts it down.
He recovers the stolen hosts and brings them back to the church in triumph, which earns him the title Apostle of Antwerp.
And there is a fantastic historical quirk about this in the artwork.
Oh, I love this part.
Because of this victory, almost every statue or painting of Norbert shows him holding a monstrance.
That's the ornate golden vessel with a glass window used to display the communion host, right?
Yes. But as several art historians point out in our research, monstrances didn't even exist during Norbert's lifetime.
They hadn't been invented yet.
They were invented centuries later. The image stuck simply because it perfectly symbolized his defense of the sacrament.
It's just art prioritizing theological legacy over historical accuracy.
Exactly. But his success in Antwerp had immediate geopolitical consequences. In 1126, Pope Honorius II appoints Norbert as the Archbishop of Magdeburg.
Which sounds like an amazing promotion.
You'd think so.
But why do the historical encyclopedias describe this as a near-fatal assignment? Like, why were there multiple assassination attempts against him? It seems crazy that people would try to murder a bishop just for being strict.
Well, because being an archbishop in the Holy Roman Empire wasn't just a spiritual job, it was a governorship. Archbishops controlled massive estates, they commanded local armies, and collected immense taxes.
And Magdeburg was notorious for its lax discipline and financial corruption.
Exactly. When Norbert arrived and started applying his rigid Premonstratensian rules, stripping corrupt clergy of their wealth and enforcing celibacy, he was threatening their livelihoods.
And he was doing all this right in the middle of the investiture controversy.
Right.
For anyone who hasn't taken a European history class recently, this was a massive continent-wide power struggle between the popes and secular monarchs over who had the right to appoint local bishops.
Because whoever controlled the bishops controlled the wealth and the land.
Exactly. And Norbert becomes this pivotal chess piece in the conflict. He ends up advising the Holy Roman Emperor, Lothair II. He even convinces Lothair to march an imperial army to Rome in 1133 to support the rightful pope, Innocent II, against a rival claimant.
Norbert had really come full circle. I mean, he started out as a comfortable courtier for the emperor, abandoned it all to freeze in the mud, and ended up back in the imperial court this time as a spiritual authority wielding immense international influence.
But the human body can only take so much. You know, all the travel, the political stress, contracting malaria in Italy, it breaks him.
It does.
Norbert dies in Magdeburg in 1134, totally exhausted, at only 53 or 54 years old.
His physical life was spent, but the saga of his physical body was actually just beginning.
The post-mortem custody battle.
Yes.
Okay, so Norbert is buried in his abbey in Magdeburg, but nearly 400 years later, in 1524, Martin Luther comes to Magdeburg and preaches. The city officially becomes Protestant.
And this creates an absolute crisis for the Norbertine order.
Right, because they have the sacred remains of their Catholic founder sitting in the middle of a fiercely Protestant stronghold.
And for an institution built on legacy and physical connection to its origins, recovering his relics was of paramount importance.
So the Abbey of Strahov, which is a powerful Norbertine house in Prague, decides they're going to get Norbert back.
And they spend decades trying to negotiate his release.
And when diplomacy fails, it escalates. They ultimately piggyback on the 30 Years' War.
It's incredible.
It takes until 1627, more than a century later, when the Catholic Emperor Ferdinand II militarily defeats the city of Magdeburg, that the monks finally secure the bones.
It is the ultimate game of capture the flag.
Haha.
It's a profound psychological victory for them. They transport his body to Prague, where he sits today in a glass-fronted tomb, displayed as an auto icon.
But this centuries-long determination points to a larger theme, right? Institutional resilience.
Absolutely.
Like, how does a medieval organization survive for 900 years? They survived the Protestant Reformation. They survived the complete secularization of the French Revolution.
They seem to survive by constantly adapting their outward methods while fiercely guarding their internal identity.
And those survival mechanisms are put to the ultimate test in the 20th century. The historical records contain this genuinely gripping narrative from 1950 involving the Hungarian Norbertines in the town of Krasnodar.
Yeah, this part of the research is just mind-blowing.
After World War II, the Soviet-backed communist regime takes over Hungary. They systematically begin suppressing religious houses, seizing property, and arresting the monks.
And the abbot in Krasnodar, a man named Eugene Simon Fay, realizes his monastery is about to be liquidated.
So he is faced with a terrifying choice.
Stay and face imprisonment, or try to smuggle a remnant of the community out of the country to ensure the survival of their specific lineage.
Right, so he gives his blessing for a small group to attempt an escape. And the tactics they had to use are incredible. They couldn't just walk to the border.
No, not at all.
Under the cover of darkness, disguised in civilian clothes, these monks had to physically navigate a literal active minefield.
An actual minefield.
Yeah. And after surviving that, they had to forge across a freezing 60-foot wide river to reach the Austrian border. The stakes were absolute life and death.
And the Abbey newsletters note that monks from another order attempted a similar escape route around the same time, and they were caught and shot.
Oh, wow. But the Norbertines made it. They reached Austria, acquired forged documents, made their way to Rome, and eventually set sail for America.
It's an epic journey.
They spent years saving money by teaching and serving in a Hungarian parish in California. And finally, in 1961, they purchased land and founded St. Michael's Abbey.
So out of the total suppression of a Hungarian monastery, a massive, thriving new community was born on the other side of the world.
It's a perfect example of that hybrid model in action. They had the deep internal roots to maintain their identity, but the flexible branches to pack up and rebuild in a completely different culture.
And today, their modern footprint is bizarrely diverse. I mean, there are over 1,600 members across 6 continents.
They run St. Norbert College in Wisconsin. They operate an astronomical observatory in Belgium.
They are heavily involved in forestry, agriculture, and cheese making.
Yes, the cheese.
And perhaps most famously, they hold licensing agreements with some of the world's most renowned breweries.
Right. If you've ever purchased a Leffe or a Grimbergen beer, you're actually interacting with a product deeply connected to the Norbertine legacy.
They even owned and operated a commercial television and radio station in Green Bay, Wisconsin, up until the 1970s.
Which perfectly encapsulates their DNA. You know, they are fully embedded in the world.
Yes.
But as our research demands, we acknowledge being fully embedded in the world means you're subject to the corruption of the world.
Right.
And sometimes institutions become the source of it.
This is a critical point. Any comprehensive look at a 900-year history must examine the institutional failures just as closely as the triumphs.
Absolutely. And the records from Kilnacrod Abbey in Northern Ireland detail a truly devastating controversy.
The historical record is very clear on this. A member of that abbey, Brendan Smith, admitted to sexually abusing dozens of children over a period of 4 decades.
It's horrific. And the subsequent investigations revealed that this wasn't just the action of a lone predator. It was a systemic institutional failure.
Superiors at the abbey deliberately engaged in a plot to conceal his actions, moving him between parishes and failing to alert authorities.
It is a profound betrayal of the very ideals Norbert set out in 1120. When an order's entire operational premise is based on outward service running local parishes, interacting daily with vulnerable populations, the failure to protect those populations is catastrophic.
It demonstrates that monastic structure and rigorous rules, while they might be necessary to survive the elements, offer no automatic immunity against human corruption or gross incompetence.
It is the messy, often tragic reality of human endeavor. You have the awe-inspiring heroics of monks braving a Soviet minefield to save their community on one hand, and the horrific, calculated failures of Kilnacrot on the other.
The pursuit of extreme inner holiness combined with active engagement in the world is a volatile mix. It has produced immense historical good and undeniable tragedy.
Which brings us back to you, the listener. We started this deep dive talking about our modern struggle with hustle culture versus retreat culture.
Right, that constant feeling that we're forced to choose.
Exactly. Do I exhaust myself trying to change the world, or do I isolate myself to protect my own mental peace?
And Norbert's 900-year-old experiment suggests that true endurance doesn't come from finding a flawless, static equilibrium.
No. It comes from the difficult, daily friction of holding both action and contemplation in the exact same hands. The quiet retreat gives you the strength for the chaotic hustle, and the hustle gives purpose to the retreat.
But there is a broader implication here when we look at how things survive over the long term.
Right, think about modern social movements or disruptive startups or even activist groups. We build these organizations entirely on outward hustle.
We want to change the world, disrupt the industry, fight for the cause.
Yes, but almost none of these modern movements have a cloister. They have no foundational, built-in mechanism for intense internal philosophical retreat or rigorous self-reflection.
They're all outward actions, zero inward structure.
Exactly. So if it took a deeply structured, meticulously maintained inner life, waking up in the dark to chant, embracing silence, retreating to the abbey, just to give these medieval canons the fuel to survive 900 years of plagues, wars, and revolutions, what does that mean for our modern movements?
That's a great question.
If we expect our institutions to outlast us, can they actually survive the centuries if they are built entirely on outward momentum with no sanctuary to anchor them?
It's certainly something to chew on.
Definitely. Keep it in mind the next time you feel the urge to unplug completely or the pressure to stay perpetually logged on.